Okay, and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is episode number 12, and today Maggie is back, for one thing.
Hey.
Hey, Maggie, welcome back. Joined this week again by my co-host, Maggie Parke, and we are going to talk about the new images that have recently dropped from Empire Magazine on the Rings of Power. So this is our first new Rings of Power material for a while to talk about. And welcome everybody who's attending live. Happy to see people's observations. So just to make sure people, to remind folks, I am watching all the different chat feeds today. So if you have comments or observations or questions, please make sure that you can remember you can talk to me as well as each other in the chat streams. So I can keep an eye on that. All right. JJ's teasing us about how many special guests we have this week. Yeah, exactly. Look at all these. Look at all these people.
My cat's here, and you've got your dog. So.
Exactly. We have numerous special guests. Yeah. Oh, my special guest has crawled away. Okay, she's not doing anything naughty. All right. Anyway, so we had some guests scheduled for today, actually, but we had to reschedule. So we're gonna do that at a future time. But in any case, as I said, new material dropped today. So or not today, recently, and we're gonna talk about it today. So before we get too deep into things, I wanted to obviously do a little bit of digging in to the different images that we get here. But first, I wanted to start, Maggie, you had a sort of a general PSA. You wanted to talk about exclusives and what this means, like what's happening right now.
Yeah, you know? I mean, I don't have an agenda. I'm not as brain organized as Corey is in these things, but it was like so much stuff dropped in the last week. I was just like, Corey, we need to do a PSA on the right. term exclusive and content and marketing and all this stuff. So right. I figure we just talk about it for a little bit. But you know, just the way this stuff comes out, like there's a very like tried and true way that studios do the marketing machine and things like that. Mm-hmm. So there's expectations that I think come with certain adaptations, but it's like so heightened in the last 15 years because of social media and because of, you know, immediate responses and because of quick networks where people can discuss things and boycott things and condemn things and all these other really dramatic terms, that the industry has shifted to respond to that, but not nearly as fast as you would think. Right. Huge generalization, obviously, but like really just missing the boat sometimes. I don't think we're seeing like the worst of the worst by any means with Amazon, but there's a lot of like really basic, and I mean that in like the modern term, it's so basic, right. marketing happening with Amazon. And the stuff that they're doing that's not basic, that's like a little bit outside the box,
right,
is okay. You know, right. It's not, it's okay. And you would think for something like this, it would be like revolutionary. So just kind of like some general PSA, you know, things to keep in mind, I think, when you're looking at these kind of drops. Timing is a huge one. Mm-hmm. When things are released is like the worst word math problem you've probably ever encountered if you're working right. in marketing. They're trying to right. figure out like time of day, time zones, national holidays in their biggest responding countries, where the biggest fandoms are that might share and retweet these things, who to tag, you know, all the different logistics that happen with these things. So the fact that it's coming out with Empire first, I thought was real interesting in and of itself. They're not right. going to Entertainment Weekly. They're not going to People Magazine. Empire has a real reputation as being a film magazine, and not like high end, but it's right. higher end than Entertainment Weekly or People. It's like the National Geographic of film, right?
Okay.
Ish.
Okay.
So just like having that come out, I feel like is its own thing. So we're trying to hang our star to Empire. We're trying to get a little street cred from this.
Yeah, I had questions about that.
Sure.
And this might just be me. I mean, probably
this
not
is
many
tea,
people.
By the way, I realize the mug is very. It's just tea.
It's a tea which wishes it were Guinness. Is that basically
Maybe a little bit, but I would fall asleep by the end of this broadcast. So.
Right. Anyway, so I probably surprised nobody that I'm kind of unorthodox in my thinking, but I look at all of the effort that's been put to drop this stuff to Vanity Fair and to drop this stuff now to Empire, and I say to myself, dude, what kind of circulation does Empire have? 80,000 people? Yeah. Right? I mean, like, why do that? Like, what, I mean, on the one hand, you say street cred, and I get it. There's like a name thing there, right? But if the goal is to circulate, I mean, just like to kind of, a name drop from our London group, if they had done a similar exclusive with, like, the Nerd of the Rings, they would have more than 10 times the circulation.
Or the One Ring, or Don Marshall. I mean,
exactly. I mean, more than 10 times the circulation, or possibly, 20 times the circulation. What do they gain from that? Why are they? I mean, it seems to me that they're, like, again, Vanity Fair, Empire, it seems really conservative. It seems very several decades ago, the whole
That's
plan.
what I mean. Like, I feel like they're just missing a beat. Like, especially because they had all of us in London. They pushed out the boat to make this thing happen, to offer all these exclusive experiences that are all of a sudden not exclusive. Because we can't share the information that is now being shared by other people. Fine.
Yeah. And it's very clear, by the way, that, our embargo was designed to not mess with these exclusives more than anything else. I mean, that's the conclusion that I've drawn from it.
And that's also what's kind of fascinating about the position we're in, because if we hadn't been invited to London, I'd still be looking at this going, oh, well, this is really interesting that they chose Empire only as a circulation of this instead of blah, blah, blah. They know that all of the people with the major circulations are going to circulate. But it is kind of old school thinking in my mind to start with Empire. Even when I was working back on the Twilight stuff, like, the exclusive stuff went to the fans at midnight the night before, and then it was in all the major circuits by like 9 a.m. the next morning. But for those like 9 hours, it was the fans that controlled the narrative of how that was happening and how they communicated that to their followers. And the fact that they got first was such a like empowering thing to that fandom, that you just can't help but think 15 years on, these are very organized, very professional people. These are not like 14-year-old teenage girls that just have a Twitter account. These are professional social media influencers and academics and everything else that, can really bring the street cred that, frankly, Empire can't anymore. Empire is fantastic, and it is a great resource. But I think when you're looking at something like this, they just missed a beat by not tapping into the resource they had.
Yeah, it does.
There's my soapbox, but I can keep going on.
I agree. It seems odd to me. I mean, honestly, it's nothing against Empire. I'm just like, magazines? Who reads magazines? Like, what? Like,
I almost don't think it's anything against Amazon either. Well, no, it is against Amazon big picture. But it's not against the people in charge, because it's such a machine. I think they're all just playing their roles, and maybe they have 10% flexibility. Yeah, I think maybe they have 10% flexibility within their roles to think outside the box, and that 10% is what got us to London, is what got some of these more unique things that are happening. Yeah, but they're still relying on this old school timeline, this schedule of
this sort of
dripping information
thinking
out, controlling the narrative. And we've said it before, I absolutely understand that. They want to curate the information out there to help the information get out appropriately and all that stuff. I get that. But they're shooting themselves in the foot as well.
I think so. I mean, and this is not, there's nothing surprising about it. First of all, I often feel a little bit annoyed when I hear people who don't like the messaging or don't like the trailer or something like that, and who then immediately start popping off and saying things like, the Amazon marketing people have no idea what they're doing. They're not thinking about this at all. They're just throwing, like, of course they're thinking about this. They have a strategy. I mean, and I don't just say that because I've met many of them, right? And, and I know they're thinking, I know they're planning very carefully and, exerting a great deal of effort. I don't think that they're bad at what they're doing. Totally. But I do think that the script that they're following, the overall strategic plan for the marketing, it does feel very, you know, I don't know, late 20th century, like, or not, man, maybe not that bad. It's not like one that ignores that the internet exists at all.
Right.
But like a decade ago, it just, I feel like there, and again, this is, it's hard because I don't want to just ride my own hobby horse. I mean, goodness knows for the last 10 years, I've been like, you know, doing things differently on the internet, right? And so like, that's my bag, and so I don't want to say that that's always going to be better if everybody thinks like I do, but it just really seems like a lost opportunity. That's what I often feel.
That's exactly the way I would phrase it. We're like, yeah, I mean, I also don't assume that other people have been studying fan reactions and event film adaptation engagement for the last 15 years, but like, there's just, it's not a criticism of them. It's more of an observation. And what a shame, you know, like you have this incredible resource that you're aware of because you invited some of the right people to London. You had to tell them to invite a few extra people that should have been there. So like, you know, they did some research, which is step one of a marketing campaign, but they didn't take it to that next level. And I feel like that's where they needed some sort of proper fan engagement. Anyway, we're getting into the Amazon bit. I really just wanted to do an overview of like marketing, but that's how we go. But timing, I think, is a really important thing for us to just be aware of. Like, there's a reason we're getting this drip of information, and you know, just the sketch of the troll, and just the shot of Celebrimbor, and you know, just these little things to kind of eke us in, because it's minimal effort from them, maximum response, lots of time to unpack it, broadcast, retweet, share, all that stuff. So when more material comes out, we'll already be in the thick of it, and maybe have already drunk the Kool-Aid is probably what they're thinking. I also just think you need to be careful with things that say exclusive, first look, all access. Those are buzzwords. It usually just means there's a tag in somebody's contract that says we're the ones that are allowed to talk about this now. Loads of people have that content. You'll probably get a different perspective on it in 36 hours or 2 weeks or whatever. But the first one out is usually the one that has been most groomed, most curated, most restricted sometimes, you know, most controlled. So sometimes it's worth, you know, waiting for some of those things to come out a bit later as well.
Yeah, so absolutely.
Yeah, I tried to do like 4 alliterations there with players, pressures, precedents, but momentum was really what I needed. So it's just like all those things to keep in mind. You need the momentum of the fans on board drinking that Kool-Aid. You have to have the right players involved, which they almost have, but I don't think they quite have with this. Obviously, they're dealing with a stupid amount of pressures from financiers and studios and everything else, but a lot of them are also just doing their jobs. Like, they're just marketers.
Yeah.
They are not expected to know the ins and outs of the Tolkien fandom the way that we do, that have been in it for decades. Like, of course, that's not their job.
Right. And that, and that's another thing that I know I often have to remind myself of as well, is that sometimes when I'm looking at an ad, right, or even a trailer or something like that, I sometimes have to remind myself I might not be the target audience of this. Right. You know, and that's okay. I mean, like, if I've heard some people say things like, I felt insulted, like I was told, you know, and I'm like, look, they're not going to put out everything assuming that everyone who watches it already knows everything about Tolkien. Like, they can't do that, right? So no, they're like a lot of and to be frank, Tolkien fandom as a whole, again, fandoms feel really entitled, and I get that. Like, believe me, I get that, right? But
there's a huge ownership element of fandom.
Huge, right? Like, obviously, we Tolkien fans are A, the primary audience for this show, and B, let's be frank, the only audience that really matters or has an opinion that's like worth listening to, right? I mean, it's such an easy mindset to get into, but we have to keep in mind, no matter how large Tolkien fandom is, we're only a small portion. I mean, compare, for instance, right? I mean, because this has got to be what they're doing. Compare, you know, diehard Tolkien fandom, right, to people who saw the Peter Jackson movies in the theater, right?
Yep.
That's the group they're trying to appeal to, right?
And then some. They're also trying to appeal to the people that thought Peter Jackson's films were too geeky, but really liked that Game of Thrones thing, or really liked that Wheel of Time thing, you know? So they're really trying to broaden that net. I think our response, like you and me, is just it's a missed opportunity. Like, you have a resource and it wasn't used. However, I understand that you're appealing to way beyond me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and so it's not. So that's why, like, even in my reference to Matt, Nerd of the Rings before, my point is not just like, oh, they should have done all of their promotion within the fandom instead of outside. All I really mean is there are better. I mean, they're different ways, but if the idea is to raise as much excitement as possible, get this in front of as many eyeballs as you can, a magazine behind a paywall, I totally get it. Someone who was talking about this. Chatting Myth was saying it may seem archaic, but Empire has a larger network to general audiences and entertainment outlets than the Tolkien community specifically, and I get that. But I actually disagree with larger network to general audiences. Again, it has a circulation of 80,000, and it's not a larger network. It's a smaller network. There's cachet to it. Like, I absolutely get that. There's almost because of the way that we've seen this in other like with Star Wars releases and everything else, right? I mean, even if we go back, as Maggie and I were just commenting on Batman Returns, right? They're on all of these covers, right? I mean, okay, like, I get it. I see that. Like, and there's a certain cachet to it. Street cred is what you were saying, right? And it's not that I don't understand that, but that has been that sort of thing has been, I don't know. I just myself I don't like to.
I think there's also just Empire on. I think there's also just Empire on the Shelf is a thing that looks really good and does attract a really wide net of people. So, like, anytime I'm in a train station, I pick up Empire just to see what's on the cover and what the leading stories are. It's just a given. I'm not going to buy it 99% of the time, but I will pick it up. And the magazine I have bought in the last decade is probably Empire with special covers, because those are the things you do want to covet and collect as a collector. But the wider audience for Empire is pretty significant. So, like, this made me think about the Hunger Games marketing. When that came out, Donald Sutherland, who played President Snow, he was put on all the morning talk shows, and Jennifer Lawrence was put on all the evening talk shows. So obviously the younger people are going to be staying up late and watching the evening talk shows and want to see her throwing a football around with Jimmy Fallon. Great.
Right.
The morning talk shows, Donald Sutherland was talking about how he didn't have a choice. He had to do this role of President Snow. It was a political stance that he felt required to take, and how important this film was. He really put this heavy political spin on it. So you think about morning TV show watchers, getting ready for work and things like that, seeing Donald Sutherland talk about how important this film is. You have just targeted an entire audience that never would have considered watching the Hunger Games.
Right.
So I can see that if they put it on the cover of Empire, and it is really beautifully shot. I mean, I think these 3 images have their issues, which I'm sure we'll get into, but I do think they're really beautiful. It would catch your eye, and you would pick it up and say, oh, what's this? And especially loads of people, like, obviously we know that Amazon is making this massive thing. Loads of people have no idea that Amazon is making this massive thing.
Right.
So all of a sudden it's on these magazines that you're going to pick up in a train station, or at least see in passing and be like, wait, what?
Right.
Yeah.
And okay. All right. I get that. I mean, I'm yeah. It's not that I don't see the Empire covers and say, oh, it was a bad idea to do something with Empire. But that there has been very little diversification so far.
And that was first.
Yeah.
I would have started with the people that have the biggest sway, have the most knowledge, and are the most skeptical. Give them the power of the conversation first, even if it's for like 12 hours.
Yeah.
And then let Empire drop their stuff.
Yep. Yeah, that's
They didn't hire me though, so.
No, exactly. Yeah, I that's always my problem, that they didn't hire you. Anyway, okay, so let's look at these first images. We got a bunch of images from the magazine that we want to look through, but I want to so okay, first of all right, Jorge, I want to address this, because I hear a lot of people say this. I don't even know what it means.
What's that?
When some people have looked at these images and others, and said, "It looks like generic fantasy to me." What does that mean? I don't understand what people mean when they say that. Could somebody explain what that means? I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't understand. Yes, it looks like fantasy stuff. So do most fantasy shows that I see stuff for. What is it? What says generic to you? To people exactly. I don't get it. I don't understand. So that's one question. But anyway, sorry. I seek more information from people who are making that criticism.
That's one of those broad definitions that everybody has a different definition of fantasy. That some people it might be Disney's Sorcerer's Apprentice kind of a thing, and others it's going to be fairies, and others it's going to be knights, right. And who knows. Yeah. I was laughing at the comment of why do the Harfoots have so many twigs and leaves in their hair. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot in their hair that can't be comfortable.
They do have a lot in their hair. I didn't really notice that. Okay, Andre says looks like Game of Thrones. Okay, I thought Game of Thrones looked like Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's
a story.
Yeah. Right.
And so anyway, that's not necessarily a bad thing either. Like we were saying, if it's the cover of Empire, they're looking for a broad appeal. So right. If it's a beautifully framed, beautifully lit, beautifully shot image, and somebody who might be fantasy adjacent, occasionally I dabble in the occasional fantasy film. Right. Maybe they'd pick it up and be interested.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, so hey, let me start with the negative because I don't usually do that. Can I tell you the one thing that annoys me about these? There's one detail in these pictures that annoys me. Well, not annoys. Yes, it does annoy me. It disappoints me, though. The prosthetic feet. I hate prosthetic hobbit feet. Hate it. Have hated it. Have always hated it. Hobbits do not have huge wonking feet. That's not a thing.
They're particularly bad.
And those are like not 3 times as long, but they're like they got like foot extenders on. Why do that? Why? I don't understand.
And just makeup wise, like look at that first one. It looks like you can actually see the line where it's attached to the foot.
It looks like that in that, or at least I wouldn't have thought much about it if not for the fact that the foot is so ridiculously large that I'm, kind of like looking for that.
Do you think they're just trying to align it with Jackson and say, look?
I kind of suspect so, I mean, and honestly, if they were, I don't know. I mean, I've always thought, by the way, I've never understood why more people don't object to this. Never did object to this in the Jackson films. Like, why is it that nobody, I don't remember ever hearing anybody complain. But I hated the Hobbit feet in the Lord of the Rings films just as much as, every single time I saw them, they annoy me on screen. Why do hobbits have big flappy feet?
And it became so iconic. I mean, you could buy a Hobbit slipper. They were in that Amazon First trailer years ago. Somebody was walking around the office wearing the Hobbit
slippers. Yeah. Which is like, whatever, like Hobbit slippers, okay. But I like furry, yes. Giant, no. Like, why do that? And that they chose that element. I do assume that it is some, they have been, they're obviously, they're visual look people, right? Especially are playing doing a delicate balance, right? Between continuity with Jackson's aesthetic and innovation from Jackson's aesthetic, right? It's obviously it's a careful balance, and it's not just a question of balance. John Howe is the concept artist in both places, so shocker of shockers, John Howe's art is going to kind of remind you of John Howe's art, and the aesthetic is not going to be completely different because John Howe is the main dude behind it. So okay, fine, but anyway.
I kind of agree with what Thomas Delgado says. At this point, hobbits having large feet is popular culture. Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just like
popular culture. That annoys me.
How you know they're related to the hobbits we know.
Yeah, yeah. I exactly, and I assume that's why they did it. I assume that's why they did it. I mean, there's no warrant for enormous feet in the text, so there's no pressure from the text they're adapting to do that, and so therefore it must just be in sort of the expectations. But
these are particularly bad. I mean, it looks like those are not functional toes.
Yeah,
you know, they just look like limp prosthetics.
Which again, like, and in several scenes in the Lord of the Rings films, you can see their feet flopping, like. Like vibrating when they step down, like, the little like flesh never would.
Jello jiggle.
Right. Well, flesh with bones in it, at least. Right. Anyway. Okay. So
we started with the one negative.
Hobbitfoot pet peeve.
Acceptable hatred.
Okay. All right. Now, I pretty much like the rest.
I didn't really have a negative. The only negative I had was the Batman Returns thing right in the middle of it, because visually I had a problem with the juxtaposition of that. But, Corey and I were talking beforehand about cross-pollination. Like, again, this is part of the marketing machine. This is what they have to do. They know you're going to pick up the magazine because of Lord of the Rings. So we better talk about Batman, Brad Pitt, Avatar, Stranger Things, and Face Off all at the same time.
Right. Yeah, exactly. The plus Brad Pitt is the thing that keeps, like, making me do a double take when I see it. So let's talk about Galadriel. Lots of people talking about her man-spreading posture there, right? I don't dislike it at all. First of all, I mean, let me just say, there's very little that I've seen of the Rings of Power Galadriel that I dislike. I understand that it is jarring to a lot of people. I think that that's a deliberate choice that they've made, and I am in support of this choice that they've made. I think the idea of introducing a different... So I was just exchanging, or attempting to exchange, while I was running around doing errands and stuff, tweets with a person who was complaining about this earlier today. And he was quoting a place where the showrunners were quoted as saying that Galadriel has a lot to learn. And they're like, Galadriel does not have a lot to learn. She's one of the wisest people in Middle-earth. And I'm like, so Galadriel never learned anything.
So she's done.
That's no, I mean, like, ever. At any point did Galadriel learn anything? Like, apparently, right? Like, it's not possible. So telling a story in which Galadriel learns something is untrue to the lore, because apparently Galadriel sprang knowing everything and fully wise, right, from the womb or from wherever it was she sprang. I mean, like, of course she has stuff. Like, I've always been so, goodness, when Frodo meets her, she has stuff to learn. She learns stuff before Frodo leaves, right? Stuff about herself.
What a boring existence to exist for thousands of years and not be able to learn. Like, I get bored in 2 weeks without having to learn
exactly.
something.
I mean, of course she has a lot to learn. Did she know a lot? Yeah, but of course she has a lot to learn. And what's more, this is what they're telling is a really fascinating moment. Like, the story that they're telling is a fascinating moment, not only just in Galadriel's history, but in the history of the elves. And it's one of the most underplayed story in all of Tolkien, which I am really fascinated by. And that is, okay, the end of the First Age was the end of the elf story originally, right? Like, that was it. The elf story is done at the end of the First Age. And then, of course, Tolkien invented the Second and the Third Ages, right? So the question is, some elves stayed, not many, right? But some elves stayed. We get Galadriel staying. We get Gil-galad staying. We get Celebrimbor staying, right? We get Elrond staying. We get elves and Elrond hasn't just stayed, right? He not only stays, but he chooses to be an elf at the moment, right? At the end of the First Age. Like, as the First Age is coming to an end, he's like, I'm gonna stay in Middle-earth, and I'm buying in, right, to the elf franchise at this moment, right, the end of the First Age going into the Second Age. Why? What did he want? What were they doing? What were they, and how does this connect with their stories in the First Age, with what happened, with the fallout from the First Age? I mean, my goodness, it can be a scarring experience just reading about what happened to the elves in the First Age. Imagine surviving that, and then what? Now what? Now what do you do? What are your goals? What are they trying to do? And what's more, the world is changing, right? The elves, the fading time is approaching. It's already beginning to approach, right? The Second Age, things are different now, right? How do they handle that? What's the purpose of elves in Middle-earth at all? What's their purpose? And what are they going to do in their kingdoms? Like, all these things are fascinating questions, and they're Second Age questions, right? So, no, of course Galadriel doesn't have everything figured out by the beginning of the Second Age. Yes, she's experienced a lot. And that, as I understand it, is the premise of their Galadriel character. Not that she's naive and ignorant, but she's been through a lot, and she is the one who is primarily agitating and asking the what happens now questions. Can we keep doing this?
I'm going back to our gap year Galadriel. I feel more and more that's what this is. We're like, look at her stance. That's a very like 23-year-old I know everything stance.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe you have a few things to learn. But yeah, I quite like the challenge of that pose, and the really destroyed armor. It's so ragged and dirty and rough, and I think that all aligns with what you're saying. Like, no, she's growing right here. We're watching it right now.
She's and she has a long ways to go. Long ways to go. Even if you just do an outline of the major things that probably happened to her, because Tolkien changed his mind all over the place about exactly what she was up to in the Second Age. But even if you just list the potential things that she was involved in, it's a big deal. I mean, there's a lot that is going to happen to this woman between the Second Age and the Third Age, right? And the end of the Third Age.
And if you're a layperson, because again, I didn't know all of this lore before we got onto this path. If you're a layperson that just saw the Jackson stuff and you know Cate Blanchett as Galadriel, who's so composed and strong and powerful, and then you see this image, you're like, whoa, So clearly there is a journey this character has been on. She's going to change from what we see in the Rings of Power through to what we see in the Third Age. Like, yep. And you should be able to pick up on that visually real quick.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. I think it's so. Let's just look. And I apologize. Somebody was accusing me, snow warning, of straw manning, and I'm not trying to do that. I had this tweet in my head that was just sent to me like an hour ago. So, or that I just read an hour ago anyway. That's where they were quoting that and saying, basically they were quoting this in a list of inaccuracies of the show. The show is inaccurate in these various ways, and that was one of the points that was made. So it's I don't mean to hold that up as typical, but again, the issue is I feel like people are not willing to let go of end of the Third Age This is not end of the Third Age Galadriel, and it's okay. Like, it's okay to tell the story. I think it's really interesting to tell the story, like a formation story of Galadriel. And I think that there's every reason from the mixed and conflicting stories that Tolkien wrote about Galadriel in the Second Age to think that there is a whole lot she is figuring out. She personally is figuring out. She and Celeborn are figuring out. The elves in Middle-earth are figuring out right there in the Second Age about what happens. So
also, how boring is it if there's no nuance? I mean, think about humans. Like, I am not the same from 10 minutes to the next 10 minutes, let alone a year to the next year, a millennia to the next millennia. Like, you should, I think somebody said it, you should be able to see immature Galadriel, scared Galadriel, brave Galadriel. Yeah, sometimes all in the same scene.
Scarred Galadriel, yeah.
I want to see the depth that we see in the Cate Blanchett, the later Galadriel that is established in this Galadriel. Yeah.
No, that's, it's important to keep it in mind, and to think that that's the future of this Galadriel, right? And the idea is that hopefully, if it works well, right, it will add a layer of richness to the later. You can go back to the Cate Blanchett and kind of look at that character, that concept, with sort of new eyes. Let's look at the image itself. What do you make of the posture? Now, so just for a second, forget Galadriel. Like, forget context, because this is a cover image, right? So as a cover image, we have no context, right? As you say, if this is for people who are passing the magazine in train stations, we're not assuming anybody has the faintest idea who this person is. Notice, where is the name Galadriel? It's there. It's in the second to smallest print on the entire page. The only thing smaller is the citation of Morvid Clark, right?
And it's between world exclusive and all access.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So this is, I mean, it's not like Galadriel is across the front here, right? So again, you're seeing this from 15 feet away, right? As you walk past a kiosk in the tube or whatever, right? What's that person doing? What do you see in that person? What does the body language of this person communicate to you?
Immediately, I see challenge, especially in the eyes.
Yeah.
You know, that
definitely.
is a downturned chin with the eyes saying, you know, bring it.
Yeah.
But also like a steady confidence. You know, the way she's sitting is very relaxed. It's very like, I got this. I am in charge. I am
confident.
Comfortable.
I agree. I see confidence.
I don't have to watch my back. I am not scared. You know, it is a very strong pose. And the fact that it's relaxed too, I feel like is even more powerful. She's not wielding her sword. She's not challenging, standing up loudly. She's sitting quietly going, I got this.
Though also actually holding her knife, right?
Yeah.
So I'm, like, don't make me stand up and kick your butt, but I am prepared to, should it come to that, right?
And the armor too, like I think we've discussed this before. I don't know if we have or not, but like we'll just the stars. I feel like they have to mean something. So I don't know if it's metals or something, but like they bring gravitas to her image. It feels like I'm pretty hot in the military type situation, so don't mess with me.
Right. Yes. Yeah, exactly. The enormous two-handed sword whose hilt sticks up above her back is a threat of what could happen if she is in fact forced to stand up to deal with you, right? But at the same time, it's not threatening, right? As you say, there's also it's also relaxed, right? I mean, look at the way her left hand, the one on the right of the image, is just kind of hanging down, right? She's relaxed. Also, I think
like she was just picking dirt out of her.
Right.
Sorry.
It looks
like she was picking dirt out of her nails or something.
Yeah. I was gonna say tired. Like she looks not like I'm about to fall asleep. She's alert, clearly, with her face and looking right at you.
Weary.
What?
Weary.
Yeah, weary. Like I just finished kicking the butt of 15 other people, and you can be next if you insist. But if not, I'm just gonna sit here for a bit.
I mean, there's still like orc blood on her shins. Like, yep. I'll rise to the challenge if you need me to, but I'm kind of tired.
Yeah. There's a defiance. It's not. It's not taunting. It's not aggressive exactly. Right. Again, that's what I see in the. I agree. The combination of downturned face and upturned eyes. Not when you're looking over your glasses like that, in which case I just look like Grandpa. But that look is a sort of a defiant look, but I don't see it as like threatening or aggressive, especially because of the way her feet are. Her feet don't look like she's like ready to spring this monk. She's about to spring at you, right? But it's prepared. It's and again, this is the combination also of she's sitting. Right? She's not standing. She's not kneeling. She's sitting down with her knees higher than her hips. Right? So she's sitting down on something, which again it's like, that's why I say weary, right? Like there was nowhere else to sit. So I'm sitting on this thing, which is not really comfortable. I mean, when you're sitting with your butt below your knees, it's a little bit uncomfortable, right? I mean, like
especially in armor. Especially
in armor, right? Yeah. Your center of mass is really low. Again, that's it's not how you'd normally sit for fun. And looking at the background, you can see she's in some kind of ruin or something like that. I mean, it's I don't even know what it is she's sitting on. It might be a rock.
Just a stone of some kind. Yeah.
Yeah.
It does look carved. It might be a box. It looks like there might be rope or something on it, but I mean,
can't tell.
It's not meant to be a throne or anything like that. It's not a fancy dining chair.
Right, exactly. So, anyway, that's just another thing that makes me think that she's weary, like she's been exerting herself, right? Because she's sitting down, whatever, in this random place. But well, I don't know. I don't want to go off on this tangent again, but I don't understand the objections to the armor. I just don't. Why do people have a problem with Galadriel wearing armor? No, she's not wearing armor in the Lord of the Rings. What reason is there to think she wouldn't have ever worn armor? How is it that a story that includes Galadriel fighting and wearing armor, how is that? Why is it? How is this
Like
not fitting Galadriel's story?
There's many scenes where elves wear armor. Why can't Galadriel?
Yes, of course she would wear armor. Is it really just like as a girl she wouldn't do that? Like is that the argument? Because I don't think there's a really strong argument there. And what's more,
how much I don't engage in all the mess, because I'm like, really, people are saying that? That's not even worth us looking at.
Right. So as First Fish says, we want her to survive to the third age. She should keep her armor on. Now, Snow Warning, I don't know. Why do you say that? Why do you say that no elf should wear plate armor? Why not? First of all, she's not wearing plate armor. She's wearing mostly chain armor. She is wearing like greaves on her legs. Is there a reaon not to? Like, is like protecting your shins like an unelfish thing for some reason? I don't see that. Why would elves not wear plate armor? Why would Noldor not wear plate armor? Right? They were like the greatest, metalsmiths of all time. Is there a reason they wouldn't wear plate armor? I don't see it. I don't understand. Now I would find it a little shocking if, say, Sylvan elves were wearing metal plate mail. That would seem weird to me because that would seem countercultural. It doesn't at all seem countercultural to me for Noldor to be wearing plate mail. Why wouldn't they? I don't get it. But like, do we know they don't have plate mail? Where does Tolkien say that they didn't wear plate mail? Seriously, like I see no way even to speculate about this. We're told that they go into battle. We're told that I'm pretty sure it's either implied or stated that they wore armor. Why? The reason I'm asking these questions is that I think it's important to put pressure on these things, right? Often we respond, and we've talked about this many times, right? One responds, but often without thinking why one has this response, right? Mm-hmm. If you really push on yourself, really push on yourself, it's okay to have a strong reaction. You might look at this and say, oh, it looks to me really wrong that an elf has plate mail. Right. It
shows that you're passionate. That's totally normal.
Which is fine. But then, like, my advice is then, put some pressure on that. Why? Why is that? What is it about that strikes you as wrong? Is it a Galadriel thing? Is it an elf thing? Is it a this plate mail thing? What is it exactly that makes you what is the premise sort of behind that reaction? And then examine that premise in turn, right? Does that actually make sense?
Yeah.
And see, Ravenwolf, the no plate armor thing is a first age thing for the sake of a tech evolution by the time of the third age. I see absolutely no justification from from the entire tenor of Tolkien's writings, would seem to indicate technology advancement doesn't work that way, especially with elves. The best technology was in the first age. It only gets worse as things get. The elves aren't getting better at this, right? I would expect the first age armor, like the first age armor of the elves of Gondolin, to be the greatest armor ever, period. This is what we see. This is why, like, it's a big deal when you find Glamdring and Orcrist and Sting, right? Those are blades from Gondolin, which means these are going to be better than anything you can find by any hacksmith made in the third age, right? That's the way it works in Tolkien's world. So, like if the elves had ever had good plate mail armor, it would have been in the first age. Besides which, that's when they were not only at war, right? That's not only when you were at war, but they were like dedicated to war. The Noldor came to Middle-earth in order to make war for centuries on Morgoth. So yeah, I'm thinking they weren't like, ooh, plate mail, not our aesthetic. I think they were probably maxing out on that. Yeah, well, see, Tarlenian, there is so little that is described. And I do not see any warrant from the text in saying that didn't happen. And besides which, it's the wrong question to be asking. And this is the thing that I don't even know. I need to find time to sit down and devise a 140 character way to say this and say it 100,000 times. Pointing out something that is different from the adaptation, like a way in which the adaptation is different from the books, that's not even a criticism. That's merely an observation. Even when you can find evidence and there is not evidence behind even a large fraction of the claims that I see made. But even when there is, so what? People treat it like that's a smoking gun, right? Like you've performed some kind of expose. It's okay. It's an adaptation, right? The question is, how are these details working in the story? So anyway, I think.
And if you don't like it and you think it's a smoking gun, why?
Why?
Let's talk about it. Because sometimes there's a real reason. Like, I have real strong opinions about things that were omitted or changed, and I can back them up. Let's have a discussion. And then there's sometimes where I'm confronted, like, why do you think the way? I'm like, okay, I don't know. So let me go away and think on that one.
Right.
But yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just looking at one about the armor too, where she said the unevenness bothers. I think that was Praise Moyer. I don't think it's uneven. I think it's torn.
I think it's ragged.
I think it's ragged and battle worn.
It's used.
It is, yeah. And again, think of this as the best armor in existence, and it is that heavily frayed. So she's seen some serious action.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you that armor was made in the First Age, right? She's had that armor for a while. And that's one of the things that's most striking about this costume is that it shows a lot of use, a lot of wear. We can see not only holes as on the inside of her right calf there, right? The sort of worn hole in her armor. But we can also see what looks like dried blood on her left shin, right? What
also struck me with this one was the complete lack of color. It's almost completely monochromatic. And
grayscale, yeah.
You're thinking about a magazine cover and you're thinking about an elf. Wouldn't you automatically put them in some euphoric, beautiful, blissful utopia type situation? Nope. We're going to show it stark and dramatic and heavy. I mean, these are rocks. She could be down in the mines for all we know in the caves and just heavy, which is not what we associate. So therefore it's going to pique your interest and be like, wait, what? And they make sure that ear is shown, which I know there's so much divisive commentary about the ears, but again, we're talking about wide appeal. I'm going to notice the ear and be like, elf, Lord of the Rings, dark and grim, powerful woman. What? That's enough to kind of engage you and have a think.
Yeah. One of the other things that I'm really interested in with just kind of backing up and looking at like the aesthetic of the entire image. It's not just that she's not like polished up and fancy, right? And standing in some elegant pose. If you kind of extrapolate from her, right? If you take her as, especially look at the way they've prompted us to. Cover 1 of 3, the elves, right? Here's the elves. This is the elves. This is the representative image of the elves. Now, we know that they're going to do the elves standing around in beautiful flowing garments and elegant surroundings. We saw some of that in the trailer with what looked like Gil-galad and Lindon, right? But this is the image they've chosen for the elves, right? And what they're telling us about the elves is, at least this elf, as representative of the elves, that the elves in the Second Age are weary but determined, battle-scarred people, literally squatting in the dark ruins of, a place where evil has collapsed, right? That's what it
And that
looks like. It
they're
looks
at
like,
war.
yeah, and still
They're
at
not.
war. Yeah,
They're not at their peaceful living in
yeah.
the woods in bliss. They're at war.
And that like that description I just gave, that sounds very Second Age to me. Like that, I can get behind that as a characterization of elves. It's amazing to me how boring. Again, like the idea, it's like, this is why, again, you have to think it through in terms of the story that's being told, right? You can't just compare details. You have to compare stories. And it's hard now because we don't have any story, right? But if you try, this is why what I do when I am looking at these images, of course, I look at details, but what I'm trying to do is go from the details to story, right? Try to get a sense. What's the story here in this picture? What are we seeing in the story? Because that's what matters, right? That's what's interesting. And the story that I'm seeing, the Galadriel story that I'm seeing, is fascinating. And the Galadriel story that it seems like people are asking for without realizing they're asking for it is incredibly boring. I want Galadriel at the beginning of the Second Age to be exactly the same as she was at the end of the Third Age, to do very little and to progress not at all. And whatever you do, don't let there be any conflict. Or, I mean, like, it's weird. Like, I know they're not actually saying that, but that, like, if the problem that you have is she doesn't look the same, she doesn't act the same, there's difference in her character from here to the end of the Third Age, then think it through. Like, do you really want her to be exactly the same person in exactly the same place? It just doesn't make any sense.
And are you the same person you were when you were 12? And we're talking
right.
millennia.
Right. Exactly. And yes, elves do change over the course of millennia. They are not these unchanging things. That's one of the things that's fascinating. Tolkien's world building is actually really counterintuitive, counter to the intuitions that a lot of fans get. Like, for instance, you might say, well, just to give one small example, on the linguistic side, right? Tolkien said that you might think that if elves had been around for thousands of years, like, why are their languages changing, right? Why does the whole premise, right, is that the elves go off to Valinor and some stay in Middle-earth, and when they come back, their languages have grown apart from each other, and so that's why there's Quenya and Sindarin, right? And so some people say, like, well, what shouldn't they? I mean, it's the same people. Like, it's not like 50 generations later the language has changed. Like, don't they remember what they spoke? I mean, we've all known people who 30 years later have the same accent that they had, before they emigrated or whatever, right? Like that kind of thing happens. You're kind of an example of that here, Maggie, increasingly, right? Over there in the UK, still with your American accent. Why weren't the Valinorian elves like that, right? Why didn't
Some of us just don't pick it up.
Exactly. But Tolkien's response to that, I mean, he does kind of think about that in various ways, but what he says is actually, far from being more unchanging than humans, elves are in many ways more changeable than humans, because more creative, more interested in making new things and exploring new things and learning new things. So they often their language shifted, not like subconsciously or sort of accidentally, but because they were like tweaking it and inventing new things. So again, far from being like imagining elves as humans, but in stasis, right? In some sense, right? No, actually elves can be even more, dynamic in their growth and change because of the ways in which they're different from people. But anyway, okay. Let's look possibly more briefly at the other two, because I want to make sure we get to the other images as well.
I also just want to say something real quick about the language of the covers that I hadn't noticed before until you said the elves bit. Look at the little quotes. Don't expect the same Galadriel. Right. Khazad-dûm is unlike anything we've seen before. We're the traditional Tolkien little guy. Okay. Like, how to set the scene. Don't expect the same Galadriel. So it's already like, this is new and exciting.
Yeah.
Khazad-dûm is unlike anything we've seen before. This is new and exciting. But don't worry, we're totally sticking to Tolkien.
Right.
You know?
Right.
There's this real like assurance, like this is amazing, but we're traditional and this is Tolkien.
Yes.
Interesting. That's all. I
Yeah.
have no commentary beyond that. It was just like, wow, what a message they're sending on these three quotes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, agreed. Agreed. It is really a kind of like a 2-in-1 thing,
Mm.
right? Um, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, second one.
Okay. Actually, let's go to the third one.
Okay.
Let's jump around. Let's look at the Harfoots because I see a lot of people were kind of talking about that.
Yeah.
I don't have any problem with the Harfoots. I think it looks really interesting. I agree the hair thing is a little bit weird, but like, it's not my culture.
Yeah.
I think wearing leaves in your and nuts in your hair looks weird and awkward, but then again, I think that about a lot of fashions I see people doing. So like whatever, like I'm not going to judge. The sense of it is like the general aesthetic that it provides is some kind of like close to nature vibe, right? Which, okay, I mean, also with is that a bark basket with produce in it by Poppy's right foot there?
Does look that way, yes.
I think so. Yeah. So we've
That'd be
got some.
awfully heavy.
We've got what I think is some kind of bin or something, and then what looks like a wicker basket. So we're getting some kind of sense of their technology,
Agricultural. And similar to the Hobbits, we're familiar with Jackson, a focus on food and farming and
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
even
that's Poppy. I think the one on the left is, I believe, Poppy, and Nori is the one in the middle, right?
yeah, I think so.
Sorry,
And even the apron
I'm in a
she's
constant
wearing.
state of like losing track of what's been said publicly and but I'm pretty sure those names dropped in Vanity Fair. Didn't they drop in Vanity Fair? I have vague memories of this. Anyway, whatever.
I'm the worst person to ask, but I'm like,
Yeah,
yes,
I'm
that
pretty
is
sure.
them.
I'm pretty sure that they did. But anyway,
Okay.
whatever.
Also, the apron that she's wearing is very like produce collecting, right? Like that's where you
Right.
would pick
Yes.
an apple and stick it in the fold of the.
Yes.
There's a heavy focus on that, I think, and mushrooms at their feet, and
Yeah, yeah. Oh, right. Are those mushrooms over there?
yeah, that is mushrooms by his feet.
Oh,
So,
I see the stalks. Okay.
yeah, I think that other one's a mushroom then too, the one by the
That probably
stump.
is. Yeah, I thought it was a basket. It looked wicker, but I suppose it's
Yeah.
a mushroom top. That's fine. But I agree. It certainly looks hunter-gatherer-ish, right? I think that's
And rough.
yeah,
I mean, those are hand spun, woven fabrics and cloaks, and very dirty and very tattered. And
right. Oh, JJ has come to my rescue. Yes, Empire Magazine described this on their Instagram as Poppy Proudfellow, Eleanor Nori Brandyfoot, and
excellent.
Sadok Burrows. So there we go. Okay. I was pretty sure I wasn't I wasn't breaking
You're
any
like,
embargoes
"That
by
it?"
saying that, but yeah, no, I knew it. I was sure I had run into that somewhere. Okay, but that's fine. So there we are. Yeah, okay. So the other thing that we're seeing is poverty. The materials, like the clothing, is very rough, very, sort of very, very homespun. Yeah, Edith, let me address the Eleanor thing. This has been a subject of prodigious comment, even just among those of us who were in London. I have the following. Here's my logic about that. I'm not stressing about it. That's my conclusion. And here's the following logic. I know that the showrunners know what Eleanor is and the significance of Sam's daughter's name, and the history of the Eleanor flower and everything else. Like, I know that they know this, right? Knowing that they know this, they have chosen to give her the name Eleanor. And I am, therefore, it's, again, I see people say, and again, I know, I apologize, Snow Warning. I know it sounds like I'm just straw manning again, but I apologize if you can hear lots of puppy squeaking going on below me.
Kitten's pretty cute.
Kind of obnoxious, but there we are. Squeaky toys. Anyway, point is, I hear people on, so I get this stuff on Twitter all the time. You know, people saying like, see, they have no idea what they're talking about. They don't know that, you know, Eleanor was blah, 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 you know, that flower wouldn't have been blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, look, I don't know the story, right? I don't know like the rationale behind that they actually have behind giving her this name. I do know that they know all that, right? Like, I know that they know those things, right? I know that they know those things. I know that they're thinking about this. This is definitely not just a matter of, I mean, just from having met those people, I am very convinced that they're not just like, Eleanor, that's a Hobbit girl name, right?
That's a good name.
That's good. Fans will like it if we just like, they like Sam, and so Sam's daughter's named Eleanor, so we'll name her Eleanor. But it's problem solved, right? That's obviously not their rationale. Like, these people are way more intelligent than that and know their Tolkien really, really well. I don't know what their rationale is. No clue how it's going to fit into the story, how that could be explained. So when people say, how could she be named Eleanor after the flower? Would there have been any possibility of that? We don't even know where they live, right? So who knows where exactly they were and what the story was there. So I'm not stressing about it because I am confident that they have an answer. I don't know what their answer is. I don't even know for sure that I'll love their answer if I ever do hear it, but I know that they have an answer to this. So that's why I'm not stressed about it. So we'll see. I don't consider it like a red flag or anything like that. It's interesting. It piques my curiosity about the character, right? The one thing that I find really interesting is, so her friend is named Poppy, right? Which is sort of a more common kind of flower, right? So you've got this one, literally garden variety flower, right? Poppy. And then you've got this other exotic elf flower, Eleanor, right? And it does not seem to me a coincidence that the character who's named after the exotic elf flower is the one whose voiceover in the trailer is talking about, haven't you ever wondered about lands beyond our own, right?
Adventures, yeah.
So there seems to be some kind of story there with her, with her family, who knows, right? That she is countercultural in some ways, right? We got that from the first 5 seconds of the trailer, right? And so it doesn't seem to me wholly unfitting that her name should be in a different kind of flower genre, right, than the other flowers there. So again, this suggests to me that there's some interesting story. There's some interesting thinking going on here. Don't know what it is yet. Can't judge. But that's why I'm not stressing out about it. I'm sure there is an explanation. Okay. What about the dwarves?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just still looking at the Harfoot one. I'm like, I have nothing else to add. I'm Besides, I really love the smile on the ladies. I just feel like it's very enticing and warming and welcoming and very Hobbit-like.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I do think Snow Warning that they are evoking similarities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they want to show a continuity. Notice there's also in this, and it's interesting that I was just talking about like technological decline versus technological increase, right? There are reasons to believe that like the hobbits of the Shire are more advanced, more technologically, so their textiles are probably better, right? Their technology is probably better. Their agricultural techniques are probably more advanced, right? Why? In Tolkien's purposes, why would that be? In Tolkien's world, why would that be? Because of their contact with the Dunedain, principally, is what Tolkien says, right? They have some contact with the elves, more contact with the Dunedain, and they learn a lot of things, building techniques, agricultural techniques from them, right? But this is before that. This is before that entire, I mean, there's no such thing as Dunedain yet, or at least they're all still in Westerness, right? Well, those that aren't visiting, whatever, anyway. It's complicated, right? But the point is, it's before that time. So yeah. I like the fact that that what we're seeing is something which is much more like somewhere like Stone Age, Iron Age. Mm-hmm. That seems totally fitting, actually, and just really interesting to me to sort of depict these sort of humble beginnings. And what I would hope to see is some through lines, that is to, where you can see where later Hobbit culture is going to come from, right? Yeah. So there'll be some kind of continuities, and then
not gimmicky, just informed. That you don't want to see it planted there just for planting's sake. But the same thing we were saying about the showrunners, they know their stuff, so it makes sense to establish some traditions or some looks or some behaviors or songs that we might notice from many years later. Right.
Yeah. Very, very possibly. Praise Moyer says the hunter-gatherer look is why I think that the moose elk carrying people are Harfoots as well. On the one hand, Praise, I kind of hope so, as that would explain the proportions of those elk antlers. But at the same time, I look forward to. I still have never had anyone explain to me why you would go out with antlers strapped to you like that. Again, whatever. I'm not going to judge. Okay. Dwarves. Actually, hang on a second. Okay. At the same time, let's play the same game that we did with Galadriel with the other two. Both of the other two images. Going back to the Harfoots for a second. What does their body language tell you? Again, 15 feet, kiosk, tube. What are you learning from this? I'm seeing three separate things. We have three people, right? Poppy's smile says mischievous. Mm-hmm. Right? We're getting like a mischievous smile. There's a smile there. You'll notice it's the only one. Dwarf Queen is also smiling a kind of a regal smile, right? But Poppy is smiling like she has fun, right? Like she's again, slightly mischievous smile, slightly more. Nori in the middle has this like the like I am pleased but I am not smiling expression on.
It's quite bold too. She's just like
her posture, her shoulders, and
leaning back a little bit, but they both have a foot forward, which I feel like is important.
Yeah.
And technically he does too, but he doesn't feel forward. He feels backward.
Yes, exactly.
That makes sense.
I agree, Scott, that him facing away from them does feel important, right? He's not got his like back all the way to them, right? He's with them. Their faces are all facing us, right, in the same direction. And yet the different orientation of his shoulders, his body is oriented in a different direction. It does suggest that there's a divide. I feel invited to imagine a divide there.
And if we want to go deep into body language, in the center we have two open arms and she's the wanderer adventurer. Then we have one arm in front, so she's probably a little bit more hesitant but good friends. And then we've got that guy with arms crossed saying nope.
Yeah, or at least hands folded, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He looks more closed. He looks more skeptical. Yeah. The fact that he has gray hair. And I can't figure out whether it's just hair or whether those are like sideburns to put Elvis Presley to bitter shame. Those could be the greatest mutton chops in the world, is what it kind of looks like. But anyway, whatever.
People are, but no chin strap. Go
no,
figure.
no chin strap. Exactly. No,
Yeah.
anyway. It's cool. He's doing the whole like leonine mane thing, right? Which gives him a sense of authority. The grayness, right? He's not only male and they're female. He's also and pointing in the other direction. He's older. He's older and they're young. So again, there's definitely sort of differences, right? I don't just mean differences like they're not identical. I mean there's like a divide, right?
No,
It seems.
but I mean, just from again visual point, it's also nice to see diversity across two of these covers, and it's not a focal point. It's just there it is.
Yeah.
You know, that's also nice to see.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple people are saying there's it seems perhaps some kind of reminiscence of a British judicial wig in his hair.
That.
Apart from the pointedly receding headline or hairline, right? Which again, like I'm all about it, right? So you can see I think he's pretty much rocking my hairline, maybe a little bit further back even.
You need to work on the chops.
The chops, yeah, exactly. I gotta fallen way behind on the mutton chop thing. That's primarily because I want to stay married, but anyway, yeah. So yeah, no, I think yeah, but like whether they're actually going for judicial or just but also like the hands folded, like his posture, he's more closed in compared to Nori there again, who does look very bold. I think is right. Yeah. Okay. Dwarves, their body posture primarily says to me. So what is the center piece of this? What is the focal point of this image? Their hands in the middle, right?
I'm like the framing of this is just textbook.
It's a gorgeously framed picture.
I've definitely talked about it in other classes and stuff, but like the rule of thirds thing where you can divide an image into three, this nails it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And rather than have a third person in the middle, right? It's their clasped hands in the middle that are the image, right? That are the centerpiece. This tells me, I feel that this image is communicating to me that the relationship between these two is a very, very important thing, right? Is going to be a real focal point. However, their relationship is not going to be entirely smooth, I think, as that seems to be communicated to me by the significant discrepancy in their facial expressions, right? His grumpy, hers very pleasant and pleased.
His is like smirky. His is like
a little bit. Yeah, it's not wry. Perhaps would be a better way to describe it, right? He has a wry expression. The tilt up of one eyebrow, right? He's got that going on. Yeah, I like it. So much gold, right? I mean, gold is clearly the dominant. That's what you would notice from like 30 feet away, right? Yeah. Is all the gold, and that I like that for the dwarves.
I like that it's all very man-made hard edges. There's a real chiseled straight lines, 90-degree angles, real specific.
Yeah, it does seem to fade up into what looks like more natural rock around the very top of the image in the background behind all the titles. But I agree, like the focal point there are what I think those are their chair backs.
Their thrones,
right? Like the thrones they're on or whatever, what look like thrones.
With a fire behind them, fire pit behind them.
Yeah, so there's a row of fire, like a fire pit or I don't know what you call it when it's in a row, right? Like an elongated brazier or something. And then yes, all of those angular lines. This has almost always been the aesthetic associated with dwarves, like geometric shapes and straight lines and angles and things. And that makes perfect sense because it's so much easier to do straight lines than curves when you're carving in stone or metal. Like there's a reason that Norse and Anglo-Saxon runes are all angular, right? Because it's way easier to chip a triangle into wood or stone than it is to make a curve, right? So anyway, so that seems to me to fit. I love the gold. The gold has been a thing with these dwarves since the beginning. It's been a major motif. Remember even seeing the gold dust on the hands in the earlier images that we saw. But
I love that the gold is also really warm and earthy somehow. I mean, it'd be very easy for this to just be like bling, and right. It's not. I mean, obviously they're showing their wealth and their stature and all of that, but it feels very warm and earthy as opposed to shiny.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. Warm. It's very much a fire-lit scene, right? This is not a sunlit scene. Again, fitting. But the result of the yellow, the orange-yellow firelight and the gold is this extremely warm color palette.
And the wood table and his red hair and her brown hair, it's just very rich,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I also feel like they're sitting quite far apart.
Yes.
Did that strike you? Yeah.
Well,
like if you're going to grasp somebody's hands, it feels quite awkward to hold your arm out at that angle.
Yes, I agree. But though again, it strikes me as sort of a piece with what I'm getting about their relationship, right? They're close, but they're not that close, right? They're close, but they're not a unit, right?
There's some tension, but
there's
also
there's some space.
Yeah, if you do look at the chairs, though, I guess the chairs couldn't be that much closer together because they're so grand. But
and they're presumably arms, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, the chairs do suggest,
right.
that they do have some tension between them, and there is some space between them.
Yeah, but they're reaching across it at the same time, right? I
mean,
there's something, as you say, that's not like. You wouldn't sit like this, holding your arm out like that to hold hands with somebody to like watch a movie or something.
Right.
But this is not a snuggling on the couch kind of moment.
No.
But it is, this like, so it does convey this, like, I am reaching out.
Across the divide.
Across this divide. Yeah, exactly. Let's see, Edith says, do we know if this is an arranged union or an organic one? Yes, but we can't tell you. Sorry. I told you I'd be honest with you and tell you when I was keeping things from you, and I am. We did see a little bit more about this in this scene, but soon we'll tell you as soon as we can what we do know. But keep in mind, this means all of the rest of the times I've not been saying that, we're really if ever else if I ever tell you I don't know something, it's because I don't know. If I know but can't tell you, I'll tell you that.
I like your style.
Yeah.
What do you think about the gold chalice in front of her? It seems super like purposeful to put a grail, a gold chalice in front of her.
Yes. Why are they setting light to the grail-shaped beacon here on this cover?
It's bigger than her head when you zoom in. It's literally bigger than her head. So proportionally, it's kind of problematic to me.
Though it also, I can't tell how much in the foreground it is. And also, it does not look like a tiny little egg cup under any circumstances. But I wonder how much closer to us it is than her.
It looks like halfway on the table. It also looks like the more I zoom into it, the more it looks superimposed. So I'm like, was that a late add-on?
Right, I have no idea. It does look ceremonial. It does look ceremonial. Are those papers, Phil? Yeah, I wonder if those are papers on the table in front of him. Anyway, with the Grail, I'm not sure what to make of the Grail. It's so squarely in front of her, it almost blends into the gold on the front of her In fact, I think I looked at this for quite a while before I even noticed that was a separate object. I thought it was like a gold plate on her, like among her gold plates on the front of her, like necklace neck thing going on there. But anyway, she's got that papers. I guess those are papers.
I think so. It looks like they might be in maybe they're in a leather wallet or something, but it definitely looks like a document.
Right. So he, right. Phil says it looks a bit CGI. I'd be very surprised if that were the case. I would just say.
I'm sure there's a load of CGI touch up on it, but the chalice really does look CGI to me.
I wonder if maybe it was added. I don't know.
Maybe. Yeah, we don't know.
Maybe they looked at it and said, what we really need is a chalice. I don't know.
But also just to make it glow this way, like it's definitely going to be super photoshopped.
Yeah. Yep. Don't know. But anyway, symbolically, having the chalice in front of her and papers in front of him suggests large cup says to me hospitality more than anything else. Maybe I'm wrong. It could be ceremony as well, like, even almost like almost religious ceremony that could be associated with her. Maybe with the cup and associating that with hospitality, I'm being too influenced by like Eowyn and the cup at dinner, in Anglo-Saxon, following Anglo-Saxon tradition, in the Two Towers, that kind of thing. But like the offering of the cup and the having of the cup, when there's only one cup, like if they had both had cups, it would just be what they were drinking out of, right? But if she has a special cup, it suggests some kind of like welcome cup or something like this. It's kind of what it makes me think of, but maybe that's wrong. The papers do business. That I agree, Pontine and JJ. That's what I associate with it when I see the papers on the table there. Yeah. Okay. Let's look at other images because we're like almost out of time, and I could talk about the covers forever. But
I know.
Okay, so we've got Sorry. What?
We still have so much to get through.
So we're gonna go fairly quickly through some of these, just do some impressions, because I definitely want to get to Celebrimbor, which a lot of people want to talk about. Snow Troll, John Howe drew the Snow Troll. There you go.
John Howe. Need we say more?
John Howe.
This did, like the blue did remind me of very much a Star Wars imagery. I thought we were on Hoth for a hot second, but other than that, I thought it was glorious. Yeah. It's cool. And this is mostly just funny to me because like for months I've been hearing people say on Twitter that like, the Snow Troll looked so hokey and like, John Howe would have never stood for something like that in the Lord of the Rings films. And I'm like, okay. What's a Snow Troll? No clue. I have no idea. I don't even know if it's actually a thing. Like, that's what it gets called. That is, I don't know if people inside the show call it that. Like, does Galadriel call it a Snow Troll? I don't know. That's what I mean. That it's been called that. I'm pretty sure nobody in the show is going to call the guy Meteor Man either, right? So. I don't know. Is there a such thing as a troll made from snow? A troll that lives in snow? I don't know. I mean, what I do know, of course, is that trolls are very like, the mythic roots of trolls is very Nordic. So that trolls might exist in a snowy environment seems legit to me. But no idea. So this is called people call this the Snow Troll, but again, is that an in-world thing? I don't even know. Until it is an in-world thing and I hear how it's used in-world, I'm not even going to worry about it. But because again, I don't know what they mean. Do they mean a snow troll in the same sense that like trolls are like it's associated with snow in the same way that other trolls are associated with stone? I have no idea. And I see no reason to even speculate in that direction until we know more. But what I do like is that they included John Howe's signature on there because that feels very like, look, we got the right people. Look at this original piece of art,
Right. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, maybe he turns into snow when exposed to sunlight. That would be kind of fun. And here he is, right in the trailer. This is which there's some snow clinging to him, but other than that, and that it appears to be cold, I don't see any reason to. I love how this is labeled. He's given the first look stamp by Empire, even though, of course, we've all seen this dozens of times before, but that's okay. Okay. I am not deeply moved by this image.
I don't have any of the depth of knowledge you have, and my first thought was, what Star Trek movie is this from? It does not look impactful. It looks like the Forgotten Movie and the Captain That Was Cut.
My until proven otherwise, I'm going to believe that those are his PJs. I think he just got out of bed.
I love how you give everything the benefit of the doubt, Corey. Excellent.
That's what I think. I think he just got out of bed, and he's it's why he's got that kind of grumpy look, right? Staring off into the sunlight.
Or maybe preparing for Elven graduation, because sitting through those can be torturous. So those are his,
I can only imagine.
Academic robes?
Can only imagine. No, his academic robes, even my academic robes, are fancier than that.
That's true.
But yeah, no, I think PJs. PJs works for me.
The hair. Oh, the poofy hair. Yeah.
So I don't as far as like from the shoulders up, like from the neck up, I don't think I hate it. I'm not saying that I love that hairstyle and want to emulate it, even assuming that were possible. But I don't hate it. Look, I've been privately hoping, I've said this many times, that if they need to make somebody into a jerk in order to make Galadriel and Elrond look more noble by contrast, Celebrimbor's been my vote from the beginning. If somebody's got to get thrown under the bus, I vote Celebrimbor. I'm throwing Celebrimbor under the bus every time, right? So if you need somebody who is going to be like somebody who's going to be made a fool of, somebody who's going to be like it says, there's got to be conflict, right? So if we're going to have characters saying, we know, for instance, like what we know of the drama of the Second Age is you've got some people saying, this Anatar dude, probably bad news. Let's have nothing to do with him, right? And some people, Celebrimbor primarily, saying, oh no, I'm sure it'll be fine. What's the worst that could happen, right? So we know that there's going to be this sort of conflict, right? We've seen so many times somebody who, I mean, it's a really cliched idea, but it's also kind of a fundamental scene setting concept, right? We have one person who says like, we should take action. We should be on the alert against this thing. And somebody who says, no, let's not do that. Let us like ignore things and everything's okay and stop rabble rousing and raising trouble, right? There's almost always got to be one character, often played by an elderly male, right? Who gets the like role of the pastor, John Lithgow's character in Footloose, right, or whatever, or like the stick in the mud character who a character like Galadriel has to be in conflict with, right? Mm-hmm. My fear all along has been that would be Gil-galad, and I didn't want it to be Gil-galad. Right. I didn't want, because I could easily imagine that. I could easily imagine Gil-galad being the one whom they decide is going to be the like conservative, like whatever dude, and then have Elrond and Galadriel be the underappreciated folks whose warnings are not heeded or whatever, right? But anyway, okay.
Yeah, I mean, again, not the depth of it, just the visual immediacy. What I am interested in is just like this actor. He's a really famous stage actor. Like he could do some really cool stuff with it. I'm still trying to keep an open mind that this could be really good.
Okay,
but
hang on a second. Sorry. I was just gonna say, I just have some questions for people who are asking questions or making comments. Question: Ravenwolf says definitely doesn't look like a ringsmith. What does a ringsmith look like? I'm not just trying to be a wise guy. Like, I'm serious. What does a ringsmith look like? Now, see, again, this is where, when we see, be especially cautious when you're seeing a character for the first time, right? When you see a character for the first time is when you're going to have the biggest reaction of, oh my gosh, that's different from how I've always pictured it in my head in lots of different ways, right? And that's fine. Like, you're totally entitled to dislike whatever you want to dislike. But I always find those initial reactions very untrustworthy, mostly because they're the ones that are least based on actual reason, right? And most based on emotion, most based on a visceral response to something that is different. Something different from your expectation, different from your own, what you've imagined in your head. And I say this whether it's a purely aesthetic thing or even whether it's an idea thing. People are talking about how, like, but wait, Celebrimbor is a generation down the genealogical tree from Galadriel. Why does he look older? Wait a second. Why are you so bothered about this? That's plastic. There's no reason we can't play with that. Is there a reason we can't play with that? Why would that story not fit? Yeah, would that be like if they showed Celebrimbor as having serious seniority over Galadriel? Would that be a change? Yeah, that would be a change. I'm not convinced it would be a bad change. I'd be interested in that. There's something actually that I think that could work really well with that. So I mean, I find I could definitely be convinced to show Celebrimbor as being senior to Galadriel. Why? Because I think it would be one way. What is one of the obvious tensions between Celebrimbor and Galadriel as far as Tolkien's work is concerned? Feanorian versus non-Feanorian, right? Celebrimbor is like the Feanorian in this season, right? He's not just the grandson of Feanor. He is the one who is, in a sense, trying to carry on or perhaps recuperate his grandfather's legacy, right? He's trying to, like, I'm as good as Feanor, except I'm not, I'm not a madman. So, like, there's all kinds of. But remember, the Feanorian, that's the senior line, right? One of the other things, I don't know if they're going to play this, but one card that's available to be played is that the Feanorians still feel like they should be king, right? That they're the elder line that was disenfranchised voluntarily on Maedhros' part, though not supported by all of his brothers, including Celebrimbor's dad. So if they so again, what I try to do is get away from my initial visceral reactions and say, okay, how might this be working? How does this fit in with their story? And if they wanted to represent in Celebrimbor the elder line of the Noldor who's been pushed aside and marginalized, one way to visually convey that, like viscerally convey that to people, is to show him looking older than Galadriel looks. By the way, how elves look doesn't even necessarily mean anything about how old they are. How they look is a little bit voluntary.
You just explained so much to me and other stuff. Okay, so there's a lot of conversation, doesn't look like a ringsmith, all this stuff. The only thing most people know about Celebrimbor is that he forged the rings, right?
Yeah.
So there was a question earlier on, so why is this our first image? And I feel like, 4 minutes ago, I was like, yes, why is this our first image? I feel like you just explained that. Because what we know is that he's a ringsmith.
He's a ringsmith.
So if they had shown us a picture of him in the forge or wearing an apron or, actually, that doesn't give us anything new. But giving us that image and then attaching the name Celebrimbor where we can go, oh, he's the ringsmith. But wait, he looks quite political and in a very fancy atmosphere and wearing a weird outfit, but I'm going to ignore that. And, so it does give us a lot more. So in one image, they gave us a lot more depth to this character. We thought we knew what we knew about him.
I mean, if we just
Really
saw him at the forge, it would have been like, check, right?
Yep,
Which is
exactly.
fine.
Oh, he's the dude that made the rings.
Instead, what we see is him staring off stage right with. Now, wait, hang on a second. Tell me about the right versus left thing. Right is that the way he's facing is progress.
Hang on, I need to get back to the image. I was on you.
Things go from left to right.
If they move from left to right, so God, I'm still trying to get back to the image.
He's looking to the right.
Yeah. So technically that is forward progression because he is looking to the right, but look how far into the frame he is. He doesn't have very far to go.
Though it means he's pretty far forward.
That still feels pretty closed off to me.
Okay.
So I guess, and I mean, filmically, you could say, yeah, he's in the final third. So like it is forward progression, but he's already progressed. He doesn't have far to go. But that could also be quite a detriment that he's about to cross over into the dark side. And that's kind of what this face looks like.
But he's facing the light. And the third of the image that is on the right-hand side where he's facing is the light part of the image, and the darkness is behind him. And look at his face, right? You got the shadows and the back part of his head, and his face is towards the light and facing into the light. It looks very hopeful to me. I mean, again, if I didn't know anything about his character, I'd be like, I might be inclined to be like, this is a guy who maybe has a dark past, but he is considering, like, going in a positive direction. I'm not sure. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah. But I don't know if I feel that, but
no,
I can see.
He certainly has troubled brow. He is looking with troubled brow. That's a Conan phrase, isn't it? Sitting on his seat with troubled brow.
I see him looking.
But yeah,
I see him looking towards the light. I can see that being optimistic. The space behind him through that doorway is very bright, but it doesn't look like he's going there. He's going another direction.
Yeah,
there is still light coming from behind him though too. So I don't know how much importance I would put on light in this image. But the final third of the three of this image, I would say, is quite telling that there is forward progression, but he's either progressed as far as he can or he's very stuck and limited.
Right. I like Snow Warning as an observation that it looks like he's looking at someone causing mischief in his yard, right? Like he's just about to yell out the window. Right?
Get off my lawn. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's quite accurate. He looks a little more contemplative than grumpy and alarmed, but that is kind of funny. Anyway, yeah. So, he's got. He's literally got lots of knowledge behind him. I agree. He's coming from a place of learning, right? Clearly. The lamp right over the scroll on stand looks like he might even just have stood up from studying that scroll, potentially. So, yes, scholarly.
Or maybe read something quite disturbing and was moved to action.
Right. That's true. And it's a library behind him, so I've changed my mind. It's probably not pajamas. It's probably his bathrobe instead. It's his bathrobe. He was just chilling in his library. He was having a bit of a lie-in, looking at his library.
Light morning reading.
This is not Celebrimbor dressed to kill. This is a quiet domestic moment for him. So this is what Celebrimbor wears kicking around the house. That's exactly. It's just like his reading snuggie. That's precisely what he was wearing, or his smoking jacket. Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly what this whole image says to me. Celebrimbor in a smoking jacket and contemplating. Thinking, I agree, he's not angry meow, he looks more disappointed, okay, or skeptical, says another. Yeah, okay, sure. So I see some people saying he looks like a nobleman. Yeah, he was. Mm-hmm. So that tracks. No, I agree, it's still costly rather than simple attire. Yeah, I mean, Celebrimbor's bathrobe is going to be amazing, right? Like, I don't blame him for not putting gems on it, because that would suggest, sort of more deep personal problems. But you want to you still want to have like some really intricate pleating work there along the front of your bathrobe, and some what looks like embroidery perhaps around his kind of collar area there. I'm down with that. I mean, I do have to admit, having a bathrobe that apparently fastens up the back, I guess you can just throw it over your head like a snuggie. That could work.
More than anything, it reminds me of the choir robes I wore when I was a kid. So maybe he's just, heading to chapel to sing some songs.
Possibly. Yeah. Maybe that's what's over on the right. Looks like got some vaulting going on in there. Right.
Exactly.
That's right. Yeah. So you think maybe the look on his face is, I hope I'm not late to choir. Probably not.
Maybe panic that. Oh God, that him again. We are getting off track. All right.
A little bit, but anyway, I'm.
It's
look. There's no question. I don't look at this image and be like, like it's the Celebrimbor that walked out of my imagination. But I don't hate this, and the age doesn't bother me even a little bit. In part, it's because I'm getting old enough that I'm like, it didn't look that old. But in addition, I don't. First, so on the two that there seem to me to be two notions that underlie an objection to an elf looking old, right? Objection number one is this notion that elves are eternally youthful, right? Unchangingly, eternally youthful. That's not true. Mm-hmm. That's not Tolkien's elves. Witness Círdan and his long beard, right? Círdan looks old. Why? Because he is. So that elves age, that's a thing. I see no reason to think that's not a thing. Second thing is that first issue was that elves are and the second is that him looking older than Galadriel does. And as I said, I actually, to me, I can see myself really liking it. It depends what they do with it. Maybe they're not going to do with it what I think they're going to do. But I don't hate the idea of Celebrimbor looking older than Galadriel. I think that could work in lots of different ways. But yeah. I mean, in some ways, maybe it just tells you something. And in fact, again, this goes back to Tolkien's world building and stuff. I think it probably tells you more about him personally. Mm-hmm. Again, elves, their bodies don't work the same way that human bodies do. Elves' appearance is elective. It's plastic. It can change over time. I don't just mean a natural aging process. I mean that there are Tolkien described that there are circumstances under which they would change. They could change, like different nose, different face, like a what was Tonks's name?
Animagus.
What's her talent? The thing that Tonks could do in Harry Potter. I kept coming up with Animagus too, but that's the turning into an animal. I'm forgetting the term for it.
I know. Now all I can think is
not like that, where they can just like pop their faces into different, like Tonks could in Harry Potter. Mm-hmm. Metamorph Magus. Thank you, Alicia. That was going to bother me. Metamorph Magus. That's it. Oh. It's not like that exactly, but it's like that. But there are times when he describes that kind of thing over the course of a long period of time. So anyway, like elves, the relationship between their spirits and their bodies is just, it works differently than it does with humans. So their bodies are more an expression of who they are. So there's a very real way in which, like, I think somebody who's, if I saw two elves and one looks older and has like a more lined face, like this guy appears to have, and then there's Galadriel, in a human, you would automatically be, okay, he must be older than she is, right? But in an elf, it might just be an expression of what's in his head, right? And been in his head for
And you
millennia.
Think about what we were saying about Galadriel earlier. It could be that post-war, she ages herself because she has now grown and changed. And
yeah. yeah. So there's again, it's so
Hmm.
whatever. Point is, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. But I think this is a fascinating initial image. I don't. What I don't understand is why. Trying to figure out what this could tell us about Celebrimbor.
Mm.
I feel like I've got more to work with there than I have trying to guess why on earth was this what they want. And I think it's got to be a deliberate disappointment of expectations, in a sense, like variation. Remember your observation, right? The theme of those covers was different, same, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio of this is not the Middle Earth. This is not. This is more than and different from what you expect, with a 1/3 proportion of, but it's also the same, right? It's also connected. And notice also thematically connected, they were emphasizing. Tolkien's little people, which doesn't just mean hobbits. Yes, that means hobbits, but it also is suggesting Tolkien's theme
ordinary.
Of, small hands do them because they must. The big actions that move the wheels of the world. But
I need to make a move, I'm afraid. It's 11 p.m. here and my baby is crying.
Yeah,
so I'm going to let my husband go to bed so he can get up tomorrow, and I'll take a turn with her. But,
love this picture, by the way. This is my favorite. The Galadriel and Elrond picture. Love this moment.
I think that's beautiful. It looks so sincere, doesn't it?
Yeah, I the affection here, the kind of the some people, I heard some people like jumping up and down yelling that they were going to do like some kind of like, sexual tension between the two of them, and like this does not say sexual tension at all to me. This says big sister. This says, it's just, it's charming. It's beautiful. But anyway, sorry. Yeah. People are yelling at me to let you go. I'll let you go. It's fine. Yeah. We're going to go. We can come back and talk about more images on another
I am perfectly comfortable to abandon Corey at any time.
No, however. I should go too. It keeps me honest.
Let's pick up with this next time though, because we never finished the posters and we're still getting flack for that. So let's make sure we finish the images, because this is really cool conversation. So
yeah.
Do that.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm leaving. You can wrap it up.
Thanks.
Bye.
Right. Bye. Right. And I will say, lest I be tempted to go on talking for another half an hour and get in trouble with my own family, thanks everybody for joining us, and we will see you guys again next week. Bye now.